They ruled empires built on fear and fortune.
Don Pablo Escobar.
From Pablo Escobar's cocaine billions
I came to Chicago with $40 in my pocket.
to Al Capone's prohibition riches, these mafia bosses weren't just dangerous, they were filthy rich. But who was the wealthiest of them all? The answer isn't what you'd expect. Pablo Escobar, $30 billion net worth. Let's begin with the undisputed emperor of the underworld, Pablo Emiliano Escobar Gaviria. When we talk about criminals who put legitimate billionaires to shame, we must start with the man who didn't just break records. He obliterated them with the same ruthless efficiency he used to eliminate his enemies.
Don Pablo Escobar.
Don Pablo Escobar.
Lo que sucede es que tenemos que
Il faut être réaliste. Nous sommes en train de vivre la civilisation de la cocaïne.
Escobar's estimated net worth of $30 billion at his peak wasn't just impressive, it was incomprehensible. To put this in perspective, this drug lord controlled approximately 80% of the global cocaine trade during the 1980s, making him not just wealthy, but the architect of an entire industry that generated more revenue than many countries' GDP. His Medellin cartel wasn't just a criminal organization, it was a multinational corporation with better logistics than most legitimate businesses. But what truly set Escobar apart wasn't just the astronomical amount of money he made, it was how he spent it that revealed the mind of a man who lived in a reality so divorced from normal human experience that it bordered on the fantastical. His crown jewel was Hacienda Nápoles, a 7,000-acre estate that was less a home and more a monument to absolute power. This wasn't just a large property, it was a private kingdom complete with its own zoo featuring hippos, elephants, and giraffes, exotic animals that he had shipped in from Africa at costs that would bankrupt small nations. Escobar's relationship with money was so casual that it bordered on the absurd. He reportedly spent $2,500 per month just on rubber bands to bundle his cash, and when storage became an issue, he would literally bury money in fields and walls, losing millions to rats that would eat the bills and moisture that would rot entire fortunes. When the Colombian government intensified their efforts to capture him, Escobar's response revealed the true extent of his wealth and audacity. He offered to pay Colombia's entire national debt of $10 billion in exchange for amnesty and a guarantee against extradition to the United States. Think about that for a moment. A single criminal offering to bail out an entire country. It was an offer that demonstrated not just his wealth, but his complete disconnection from normal concepts of justice and accountability. His death in 1993 marked the end of an era, but the empire he built and the methods he pioneered would influence criminal organizations for decades to come. Escobar proved that in the world of organized crime, there were no limits to how high one could rise if they were willing to sink low enough in their methods. In the pantheon of criminal masterminds, few could match the aerial ambitions and technological sophistication of Amado Carrillo Fuentes, $25 billion net worth. He earned the nickname Lord of the Skies through an operation so audacious that it revolutionized international drug trafficking. With an estimated net worth of $25 billion, Carrillo Fuentes didn't just run a drug cartel, he operated what amounted to his own private airline, complete with a fleet of aircraft that would make commercial carriers envious. As the head of the Juarez cartel during the 1990s, Carrillo Fuentes understood something that many of his contemporaries missed. In the modern world, logistics was everything. While other cartels were still relying on traditional smuggling methods, hidden compartments in cars, boats, and trains, Carrillo Fuentes was literally flying tons of cocaine directly into the United States using a fleet of Boeing 727s and other large aircraft. His aerial empire was so sophisticated that it included its own maintenance crews, pilots, and ground support staff. The scale of his operation was breathtaking. At his peak, Carrillo Fuentes was moving an estimated 200 tons of cocaine annually, generating revenues that dwarfed most Fortune 500 companies. But it wasn't just the quantity that set him apart, it was the innovation. He pioneered the use of large commercial aircraft for drug smuggling, turning what had been a cottage industry into an industrial-scale operation. His wealth allowed him to live in a style that befitted a man who controlled aerial highways across North America. He owned multiple mansions across Mexico, including a lavish estate in Hermosillo with marble interiors and private pools. But perhaps most telling was his collection of aircraft, not just the Boeing 727s used for business, but smaller jets for personal travel, allowing him to hopscotch across the continent with the ease of a legitimate businessman. Carrillo Fuentes' relationship with technology extended beyond just aircraft. He invested heavily in communication systems, using encrypted satellite phones and sophisticated surveillance equipment to stay ahead of law enforcement. His organization was structured more like a modern corporation than a traditional criminal enterprise, with clearly defined hierarchies, specialized departments, and operational protocols that would be familiar familiar to any MBA graduate. The irony of Carrillo Fuentes' story is that his obsession with staying ahead of law enforcement ultimately led to his downfall. Paranoid about being recognized, he underwent extensive plastic surgery in 1997 to alter his appearance. The procedures, which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and were performed by Mexico's most expensive surgeons, resulted in complications that killed him. The next billionaire mobster on our list is Semion Mogilevich, $10 billion net worth. Known in criminal circles as the boss of all bosses, Semion Mogilevich represents the evolution of organized crime from street-level violence to sophisticated white-collar fraud and international money laundering on a scale that defies imagination.
Some groups use a sniper rifle to take out their enemies. Some use a machine gun. Some use a pistol. The group with which Mr. Mogilevich is associated, their signature is the car bomb.
With an estimated net worth of $10 billion, Mogilevich didn't just participate in the collapse of the Soviet Union. He profited from it in ways that would make even the most ruthless oligarchs envious. While others scrambled for pieces of state-owned enterprises, Mogilevich was building a criminal infrastructure that spanned continents and operated with the sophistication of a multinational corporation.
But in addition to myself, there were 20 politicians and 50 other people who also figured in the case. So why was it me who killed him and not one of the other people?
What sets Mogilevich apart from other crime bosses isn't just his wealth, but the intellectual sophistication of his operations. This is a man who understands that in the modern world, the pen can indeed be mightier than the sword, or in his case, the computer keyboard can be deadlier than the gun. His criminal empire encompasses arms trafficking, contract killings, and perhaps most lucratively, massive financial fraud schemes that have cost investors hundreds of millions of dollars. His most spectacular fraud was the IBM Magnex scandal, a company that appeared to be manufacturing industrial magnets but was actually an elaborate shell game designed to separate investors from their money. At its peak, IBM was valued at nearly $1 billion Canadian before investigators discovered that much of the company's claimed business was simply fictitious. When the fraud collapsed, investors lost hundreds of millions of dollars, money that flowed directly into Mogilevich's network of VO, shell companies, and offshore accounts.
Boris and his friends were selling oil products in Hungary. I was selling weed.
Did you have anything to do with his murder?
Of course not.
This restraint shouldn't be mistaken for lack of resources or power. When associates of Mogilevich are threatened, the response is swift and brutal. The use of car bombs, his organization's signature method of elimination, sends a clear message that while Mogilevich may prefer financial warfare to physical violence, he's perfectly willing to resort to traditional methods when necessary. In the world of international organized crime, few figures cast as long and dark a shadow as Dawood Ibrahim, $6.7 billion net worth. A man whose estimated net worth of $6.7 billion represents only a fraction of his true power and influence. As the leader of D Company, one of the world's most sophisticated criminal organizations, Ibrahim has transcended traditional organized crime to become something far more dangerous, a terrorist financier whose reach extends from the slums of Mumbai to the highest echelons of government across South Asia and the Middle East. What makes Ibrahim's story particularly chilling is how he transformed from a small-time street criminal in Mumbai's Dongri district into a global puppet master whose decisions can affect the lives of millions. His journey began in the 1970s when he started as an enforcer for local criminals, but his intelligence and ruthless ambition quickly elevated him above his contemporaries. Unlike other crime bosses who relied primarily on violence and intimidation, Ibrahim understood that in the modern world, information and connections were the ultimate weapons. The 1993 Mumbai bombings represent the pinnacle of Ibrahim's transformation from gangster to terrorist. These coordinated attacks, which killed 257 people and wounded over 1,400, weren't just acts of terrorism. They were a demonstration of power that established Ibrahim as one of the world's most wanted criminals. The bombings required a level of planning, coordination, and resources that revealed the true sophistication of his organization. Ibrahim's wealth comes from a diversified criminal portfolio that would impress any legitimate business school. Drug trafficking forms the foundation of his empire, with D Company company controlling significant portions of the heroin trade from Afghanistan to Western markets. But it's his expansion into extortion, kidnapping, and money laundering that has allowed him to accumulate his massive fortune. His organization operates like a multinational corporation with specialized divisions for different criminal activities and a management structure that insulates Ibrahim from direct involvement in day-to-day operations. The luxury lifestyle that Ibrahim's wealth affords him is legendary, even if much of it remains hidden from public view due to his fugitive status. He is believed to own palatial homes in Dubai, Karachi, and Mumbai, each fortified like a military compound and staffed by loyal retainers who have served his organization for decades. These aren't just homes, they're command centers from which he directs a criminal empire that spans continents. His investment in Bollywood represents perhaps the most audacious aspect of his money laundering operations. The parties that Ibrahim hosted during his heyday were legendary affairs that brought together Bollywood stars, politicians, and criminal associates in celebrations that cost millions of dollars but served as crucial networking opportunities for his organization. The global manhunt for Ibrahim has been ongoing for over 3 decades, with the Indian government offering a $25 million reward for information leading to his capture. Yet he continues to operate with apparent impunity, protected by a combination of corrupt officials, loyal associates, and the sheer complexity of his criminal network. In the blood-soaked annals of drug trafficking history, no woman inspires as much fascination and terror as Griselda Blanco, $2 billion. A woman whose estimated peak net worth of $2 billion was built on a foundation of violence so extensive that it earned her nicknames like the Cocaine Godmother and La Madrina. But these monikers barely capture the reality of a woman who pioneered trafficking methods that would define the cocaine trade for decades and lived a lifestyle so extravagant that it made even her male contemporaries look modest by comparison. Blanco's rise to power in the 1970s and 1980s coincided with cocaine's transformation from a niche drug for the wealthy into a mass-market commodity that generated billions in revenue. But while others were content to be players in this emerging market, Blanco became one of its architects, pioneering smuggling techniques and establishing distribution networks that would serve as blueprints for future generations of traffickers. At the height of her power, Blanco's organization was earning an estimated $80 million per month, a figure so astronomical that it's difficult to comprehend in practical terms. To put this in perspective, her monthly earnings exceeded the annual GDP of many small nations. This wasn't just drug money. This was the kind of wealth that could influence elections, corrupt entire police departments, and reshape the criminal landscape of major American cities. Her base of operations in Miami during the cocaine cowboys era of the 1980s was legendary for its opulence and security. Blanco owned multiple upscale homes throughout Miami's most affluent neighborhoods, each fortified like a military compound and staffed by armed bodyguards who were as loyal as they were deadly. The parties that Blanco hosted were the stuff of legend, lavish affairs that brought together the criminal elite, corrupt officials, and celebrities in celebrations that cost millions but served crucial business purposes. The luxury cars that filled her driveways during these events, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and custom-built armored vehicles, represented just a small fraction of her automotive collection. The security arrangements that Blanco's wealth afforded her were extraordinary, even by criminal standards. Her bodyguard details included former military personnel and police officers who had been corrupted by her organization's money. Her homes were equipped with state-of-the-art surveillance systems, armored safe rooms, and escape routes that would allow her to evade capture even during coordinated law enforcement raids. Her eventual death in 2012, gunned down by motorcycle assassins in Medellin, was grimly appropriate, killed by the very method she had pioneered. The next we have Carlos Lehder, $2.7 billion net worth. Among the founding fathers of the modern cocaine trade, Carlos Enrique Lehder Rivas stands out not just for his estimated peak wealth of $2.70 billion, but for his unique combination of revolutionary ideology and criminal innovation that transformed drug trafficking from a regional problem into a global crisis. As a co-founder of the Medellin cartel alongside Pablo Escobar, Lehder brought a level of political sophistication and logistical genius that elevated the organization from a local criminal enterprise into what amounted to a narco state.
Once a top drug lord in Colombia, later was captured, convicted, and put in prison in the United States. Now for the first time, he's talking and he's naming names, including the name General Manuel Noriega.
Lehder's criminal genius lay in recognizing that the drug trade's greatest limitation wasn't production or demand, it was transportation. While others were still thinking in terms of small shipments hidden in personal luggage or vehicle compartments, Lehder was envisioning an aerial highway that could move tons of cocaine directly from Colombian processing facilities to American distribution networks. His acquisition of Norman's Cay in the Bahamas wasn't just a real estate purchase, it was the creation of a criminal infrastructure that revolutionized international drug trafficking. The transformation of Norman's Cay into what amounted to a private nation demonstrates the scope of Lehder's vision and resources. This 690-acre island became the central hub of a trafficking operation that processed an estimated 300 kilograms of cocaine monthly, generating revenues that dwarfed most legitimate businesses. But Lehder didn't just use the island as a drug depot, he turned it into a fortress complete with radar systems, armed guards, and aircraft capable of intercepting any unwanted visitors.
I can tell you with complete certainty that together with other associates of mine, Noriega was given several $1 million.
Toda la coca, la marihuana.
All cocaine, marijuana, weapons, ether, acetone, and any smuggled goods confiscated in Panama became the property of Noriega and his thugs.
The luxury lifestyle that Lehder's wealth afforded him was legendary, even among his extravagant criminal contemporaries. His island paradise featured accommodations that rivaled the world's most exclusive resorts, complete with private beaches, luxury aircraft for personal transportation, and entertainment facilities that hosted parties costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. His influence on legitimate institutions was extraordinary and deeply corrupting. Like his partner Pablo Escobar, Lehder offered to pay Colombia's national debt in exchange for amnesty, a gesture that revealed both his vast wealth and his complete misunderstanding of how legitimate governments operate. This wasn't just a bribe, it was an attempt to purchase an entire nation's sovereignty. His organization employed former military personnel, intelligence operatives, and technology specialists who created a security apparatus that rivaled those of small nations. The electronic surveillance systems, armed patrol boats, and aircraft that protected Norman's Cay represented investments of tens of millions of dollars, but were essential for maintaining control of his trafficking routes. Lehder's eventual capture in 1987 marked the beginning of the end for the original Medellin cartel, but his innovations in transportation, corruption, and political manipulation became standard practices for subsequent criminal organizations. His testimony against Manuel Noriega in exchange for a reduced sentence demonstrated that even the most ideologically committed criminals will ultimately prioritize self-preservation over loyalty. In the elegant boardrooms and shadowy backrooms of mid-20th century New York, no figure commanded more respect or wielded more influence than Frank Costello, $1 billion net worth. With an estimated net worth of $1 billion in today's dollars, Costello represented the evolution of organized crime from street-level violence to sophisticated political corruption and legitimate business integration.
Mr. Costello doesn't care to submit himself to us as a spectacle, and on the further ground that it would be permitted to have the benefit of counsel to the fullest extent.
Unlike the flashy gangsters of popular imagination, Costello understood that true power in America lay not in controlling neighborhoods, but in controlling the systems that controlled neighborhoods. His nickname, the Prime Minister of the Underworld, wasn't just colorful hyperbole. It accurately described his role as the criminal world's chief diplomat and political operative. The foundation of Costello's empire was built on his understanding of America's political machinery. During the height of his power, he essentially controlled Tammany Hall, the Democratic political machine that dominated New York City politics for generations. This wasn't just influence, it was institutional capture on a scale that would make modern lobbyists envious. Through his control of political appointments, Costello could determine who became judges, police commissioners, and district attorneys, creating a protective ecosystem that allowed his criminal enterprises to operate with virtual impunity. His real estate holdings were a testament to both his wealth and his understanding of legitimate business as a vehicle for criminal enterprise. Costello owned multiple skyscrapers in Manhattan's financial district, including properties at 79, 89 Wall Street, and 148, 152 Pearl Street, investments that generated millions in rental income while providing perfect cover for money laundering operations. His luxury apartment at 115 Central Park West wasn't just a residence, it was a power center where political and criminal leaders met to negotiate deals that would shape New York's future. The slot machine empire that Costello built with Carlos Marcello through the Louisiana Mint Company represented criminal entrepreneurship at its most sophisticated. This wasn't just gambling. It was the creation of an entertainment infrastructure that generated hundreds of millions in revenue while providing employment for thousands of legitimate workers. The machines were manufactured in legitimate factories, distributed through established business channels, and operated in establishments that paid taxes and followed most applicable laws.
So you never used the name Castiglia?
I was convicted for misdemeanor.
Were you convicted for possession of a revolver?
That's right, yes, sir.
Costello's lifestyle reflected his position as organized crime's ambassador to legitimate society. He moved easily between the worlds of crime and respectability, attending charity galas and cultural events with the same ease that no discussion of wealthy crime bosses would be complete without. Al Capone, $1.3 billion net worth. Alphonse Gabriel Capone was the man who transformed organized crime from a shadow world into a public spectacle and amassed an estimated net worth of $100 million at his death, equivalent to $1.3 billion today. Capone didn't just run a criminal organization. He became America's first celebrity gangster, a larger-than-life figure whose wealth, violence, and showmanship defined public perceptions of organized crime for generations.
I came to Chicago with $40 in my pocket. My son is now 12. I'm still married and I love my wife dearly. We had to make a living. I was younger than I am now and thought I needed more. I didn't believe in prohibiting people from getting the things they wanted. I thought prohibition was an unjust law, and I still do.
The Chicago of the 1920s provided the perfect environment for Capone's particular blend of entrepreneurship and brutality. Prohibition had created a massive black market for alcohol, and Capone's genius lay in recognizing that this wasn't just a criminal opportunity. It was a business opportunity that required the same attention to logistics, marketing, and customer service that legitimate businesses employed. His organization wasn't just a gang. It was a vertically integrated corporation that controlled everything from alcohol production to distribution to retail sales. At the height of his power, Capone's Chicago outfit was earning an estimated $100 million annually, generated through a diversified portfolio of illegal activities that would make any business school proud. Bootlegging provided the foundation, but gambling, prostitution, and extortion added additional revenue streams that made his organization remarkably resilient to law enforcement pressure on any single activity. The crown jewel of Capone's real estate empire was his Palm Island mansion in Miami, purchased for $40,000 and enhanced with $140,000 in security improvements. This wasn't just a home, it was a fortress complete with 7-foot walls, searchlights, and a gatehouse that could have been designed for a military installation. The property represented more than just luxury. It was a statement of power that demonstrated Capone's ability to live openly and extravagantly, despite being one of America's most wanted criminals. The scale of Capone's organization was staggering even by modern standards. He employed over 600 soldiers and associates, creating what amounted to a private army that controlled significant portions of Chicago's criminal economy. This wasn't just muscle, it was a sophisticated organization with clearly defined hierarchies, specialized roles, and operational protocols that allowed it to function efficiently across multiple criminal enterprises. Perhaps most remarkably, Capone's downfall came not from his violent criminal activities, but from his failure to pay taxes on his illegal income. The irony that America's most notorious gangster was ultimately brought down by accountants rather than law enforcement officers demonstrated both the sophistication of his criminal empire and the evolution of investigative techniques that would eventually make traditional organized crime unsustainable. Our list continues to Frank Lucas, $52 million net worth. In the pantheon of American drug dealers, few figures have captured the public imagination quite like Frank Lucas, whose estimated peak net worth of $52 million was built through innovations that revolutionized heroin trafficking and challenged the Italian-American mafia's traditional dominance of the drug trade. Lucas didn't just sell drugs, he created a business model that bypassed established criminal hierarchies and established direct relationships with suppliers that generated unprecedented profits.
What I'm saying in this book is really straight what it's all about. That's what I did, that's what I do, and that's what it was.
His famous Blue Magic heroin wasn't just a superior product, it was a brand that commanded premium prices and customer loyalty in the brutally competitive drug markets of 1970s New York. Lucas understood something that many of his contemporaries missed. In the drug trade, as in any business, product quality and consistency were key to building a sustainable customer base. His heroin was reportedly twice as pure as competing products, allowing him to charge higher prices while ensuring customer satisfaction. His relationship with Bumpy Johnson, provided both legitimacy within Harlem's criminal hierarchy and valuable lessons in criminal entrepreneurship. Johnson wasn't just a mentor. He was a business partner who taught Lucas the importance of community relationships, political protection, and strategic thinking in criminal enterprises. The lifestyle that Lucas's wealth afforded him was both extravagant and strategically calculated. His collection of luxury automobiles, including Cadillacs and Rolls-Royces, served multiple purposes beyond personal transportation. These vehicles were symbols of success that attracted potential recruits and customers, while simultaneously intimidating competitors and law enforcement officers who understood the resources they represented. His real estate investments in New York and New Jersey provided both personal luxury and business functionality. These properties weren't just homes, they were operational centers where Lucas could conduct business meetings, store product, and house associates who required protection or accommodation. His claimed daily earnings of $1 million represented not just extraordinary profits, but also the massive scale of his operation. Moving this volume of product required sophisticated distribution networks, reliable transportation systems, and extensive security arrangements that employed hundreds of people and generated economic activity throughout Harlem and beyond.
They would ask me for a kilo of whatever dope I had. That wasn't going to happen.
Lucas's eventual cooperation with law enforcement, which led to the conviction of dozens of corrupt police officers, represented a calculated decision to trade information for reduced sentences. His testimony revealed the extent to which drug money had corrupted law enforcement agencies and demonstrated the sophisticated methods that criminals use to identify and exploit institutional weaknesses. Our list ends with Michael Franzese, 50 million net worth. In the landscape of American organized crime, few figures embodied the transition from traditional street-level criminality to sophisticated white-collar fraud, quite like Michael Franzese, a Colombo crime family Capone regime whose estimated peak net worth of $50 million was built through innovations that would influence criminal organizations for decades to come.
There's really so much to explain, as to why. It wasn't an easy road, I can tell you that. There was a lot to navigate. A lot of things had to go right for me, and it was a struggle and a challenge, and I knew it would be, so I was prepared.
What distinguished Franzese from his contemporaries wasn't just his wealth, but the sophisticated methods he used to acquire it. His gasoline tax fraud scheme represented a new evolution in organized crime, a criminal enterprise that generated enormous profits without the violence and public attention that traditional mafia activities attracted. At his peak, Franzese was earning up to $8 million per week, making him one of the most financially successful mobsters in American history. His legitimate business investments demonstrated a level of entrepreneurial sophistication that was unusual in traditional organized crime. Franzese owned car dealerships, restaurants, and nightclubs that weren't just fronts for money laundering. They were profitable enterprises that generated legitimate income while providing perfect cover for his criminal activities. His investment in movie production, including films like Knights of the City, showed his understanding of how entertainment industry investments could serve both financial and cultural purposes. The lifestyle that Franzese's wealth afforded him earned him the nickname the Yuppie Don and reflected the changing face of organized crime in the 1980s. His mansion in Old Brookville, New York, represented a departure from the traditional urban strongholds of organized crime families, placing him instead in the affluent suburban communities where legitimate business leaders resided.
Yeah, I don't glamorize the life. I want to be honest about the life, and I say this all the time. I had a lot of good friends in that life.
His partnership in sports management agencies represented the kind of legitimate business diversification. These weren't just money laundering operations. They were genuine business enterprises that provided services to legitimate clients while generating profits that didn't depend on criminal activity. His eventual decision to leave organized crime and cooperate with law enforcement represented a calculated risk that few criminals in his position would have been willing to take. The threats to his life that resulted from this decision demonstrated both the extent of his former power and the deadly seriousness with which traditional organized crime families viewed betrayal. Which richest mafia boss surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to click on the cards on screen for more shocking underworld secrets.